So let's see how we get on.
Uh,
So where were we? Data?
We actually have something on testing later on as well. Maybe, but just on an unrelated note. But anyway,
the project we're talking about, we're actually right in the middle of testing it at the moment. So I think this has really reinforced the effort that we're putting into testing. I think we need to go back and do more testing. Doubly check, yeah. Anyway, so talked about the data and moving the data into a single platform. I've talked about some of the technology that was sitting on top of that data to allow us to deliver better customer experiences. And I guess, why are we doing this? I think really, as it says on the slide there, Harrods has a history of doing exceptionally high levels of customer service and personalization for our high-spending customer. But I think there's a real recognition across the luxury industry, actually, that we need to be able to expand that to more of the customers that we see shopping across our stores and increasingly on our websites as well. So harnessing the power of the data really is the way that we were able to do this, to understand exactly what motivates and drives our customers, what is going to excite them about shopping at our brands, and then to respond to that in real time. So that's the outcome that I'm looking for, and hopefully what we're going to achieve.
So when you take a look at the history of the loyalty program that you run at Harrods over the last 15 years, as you said, so what is the when you take a look at the brick and mortar side of things, how did you handle it in the past, and what do you think gets you out of the digital program basically in order to scale a bit more maybe or to reach more customers with a better tailored experience?
Yeah, so I should say I've not run the program for 15 years myself.
Yeah,
the mistakes of the past are other people's there. But I think it's been a big shift for us at Harrods, and I think also again across the luxury sector. Of course, everyone's seen massive growth in e-commerce, especially through COVID. But I think in the luxury sector, that's been very pronounced. There's always been a bit of a hesitancy to really play online, because you do lose that immediate connection to the customer, that ability to really control your brand, which is so important to luxury brands. But I think that's naturally happening, and we're seeing big players enter the market, such as Farfetch in previous years, who are really driving that change. And of course, the COVID, the pandemic massively accelerated that as well, with our customers coming online. So we've had to try and play catch up with the loyalty program, which was really designed to operate within a very specific location, which is our Knightsbridge store. So if you look at a lot of the benefits that we offer today, some of them are not necessarily doing much for our online customer. So that's one of the areas that I'm looking at as part of this program, is how do we create a more omni-channel experience where, regardless of where customers choose to shop with Harrods, they get a really excellent level of service.
Yep. Perfect, thank you. So when we now that we have the rationale basically set out and know why you are doing that and why you're engaged in that way, so what is it? Who are your customers actually? Just to give you, I know that we have some luxury brands in the audience right now, and some people have a shop with you obviously as well. But what is a typical Harrods customer, and are there different tiers that you have to react upon in a different way, that you have to engage in a different way? How do you structure that? How do you approach that kind of diverse group that you have on your customer base?
Yeah, so I think everyone has a picture in their mind when they think of a Harrods customer or a luxury shopper, and absolutely we do have a lot of very high spending, high net individuals who shop with us and spend a lot of money. But Harrods is a very broad business. We have a lot of divisions and departments and types of product that we sell, ranging from the bears, that you guys have seen, which attract a huge amount of tourism. I think we're maybe the second or third most visited tourist destination in London after Big Ben and Buckingham Palace. Then it's Harrods that people go to. So while we do attract a huge range of tourists and casual shoppers, really the heart of the business is engaging that high spending local customer, as well as high spending global high net worth individuals as well. So we've done a lot of work really trying to understand who those different kinds of customer are through modeling and customer profiling, and increasingly through predictive analytics as well. So we have a really good understanding of the different groups of customer who we need to engage with, and that then really dictates everything that we do from then on. So we're really embedding that not just into marketing, but also into ranging decisions, supply chain operations, everything that we decide in terms of what we put in front of the customer now comes from the insight that we draw from our data.
And Julian, from a technical perspective or from a project perspective, how do we support Harrods in that regard? So how do we, from a systematic and programmatic perspective, address those challenges across the different markets and brands and assortments and customer groups, basically?
Yeah, with Harrods, we had one key challenge. They have a really good loyalty program in place, and we were now the ones replacing that. And we were facing a lot of data silos in the beginning. So we had different systems that we need to break up and then also merge the data and also harmonize the data to then make people like Ned able to use the data in the right way. And what we do is basically getting all the touch points. So be it the exchange service, be it the hair and beauty salon, be it the watch repair service, we bring all together into one golden record of the customer, and we can really follow them all among all touch points. And this is a good opportunity because that gives you rich data, and you are not reliant on best guess who are my customers. You are now looking at your customers. We can enrich the data with external systems. We have social media integrations and such. And with that, we get a really great picture around the customer, and we are not reliant on this is the customer group we want to address. The data tells us this is the customer group that you should address.
And just to add to that as well, I think we talk a lot about the technical side of things, but what we've been doing in parallel in the business is making sure that as an organisation we're set up to work in this way. It's quite a big mindset shift, particularly for what is a bit of a traditional bricks and mortar retailer, really at the heart of it, to make sure that if we do all of this great work with data and analytics, it doesn't just sit in a system somewhere and doesn't get touched. So I think two things. One is what we're calling kind of democratization of data, so making sure that it's passed around the business in the right way, that everyone who should have access to the insight that we can gather on customers can access that, whether that's through reports or dashboards or other automated formats, or whether it's by working with some of our data scientists or analysts in the business to develop automated models, predictive analytics, more advanced data science. That's been a big focus and a big shift in terms of the expertise that we're bringing into the business. I think that's critical as well. So making sure that the organization is really data savvy and understands how to apply the insight that you draw means that it's worth the effort, because otherwise it cannot particularly work.
This is also reflected in the project structure itself. So it's not a sole IT project or a data-driven project that sits somewhere within your IT department. It's basically a joint effort between the business side and the IT side of things.
Yeah, exactly. So the senior sponsors really are our Chief Information Officer and then the Chief Customer Strategy Officer, so my boss. So the business and the IT side of the business have an equal share in the success of the project.
Yeah. When we take a look at your customers, so now that we know who they are actually and you have these insights within your organization, how do you actually trigger them to engage with you? How do you get them acquired into your loyalty program, basically?
Yeah, I mean, so again, it really starts with understanding who are your prospects? So who are you going after, and have you designed a loyalty proposition which is going to resonate with them? Are you offering something which is high enough value for them to want to use the program in exchange for their hard-earned dollars, pounds, whatever it is they're spending? So we spend a lot of time on research. We have very high quality analytics teams in the business who do first party data and research with our customers a lot of the time. So we have a pretty good understanding of what it is that's going to motivate customers to sign up to the program. I think that's really the basics that you have to get right. It's making sure that you've got the right proposition. It's treating the rewards, the loyalty program as a brand in its own right. So very much thinking about brand strategy as well as just customer engagement strategy. So what are the distinctive assets that you're going to use to promote your program and make sure it's kind of present in customers' minds, that they can recollect it when they're thinking about Harrods? As you would with any brand, creating a communications plan around the program itself so that customers are aware, using the assets that we have available to us. Our colleagues, our shop staff are an absolute key part of that. So making sure that they're really well trained, they understand how to talk to the customer about the rewards program is really important. They're the main human touch point that our customers have. So we really need to make the most of them. Similarly, all of our owned media, we make sure we've got presence across the website, across all of our store touch points as well. In the UK, we've started actually expanding out into other regions as well. So we're not just based in Knightsbridge anymore. We've also got regional beauty stores that are dotted around the country. So again, it's really like making sure that as we open new locations, that whole concept is really well embedded.
Okay, thank you. So when we take a look at Harrods now, also from a how do you cooperate with your brands basically that you have in store. Yeah, so you have a lot of those really high value luxury brands in store. Those are known to be very, very keen to keep control over the brand, how they are marketed, how they are sold. Basically, how do you cope with that also from a loyalty perspective? Because you need strong partnerships, you need strong brands for the whole program to work. Obviously, how do you juggle that kind of, you know, this customer intention to maybe save some money, and the brand's desire to keep value basically?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I mean, there are two most important assets, right? So the brands are why the customer comes to our store. It's the product. You know, we are essentially a distributor for a set of incredibly deluxe products that are very well maintained. The brands are prestigious and worldwide. So, you know, we have to work very carefully with those brand partners to make sure that they feel comfortable with anything we do. I think in loyalty, and especially in luxury, that's always been a bit of a challenge, because loyalty is often seen as a bit of a discounting mechanism, you know, a bit promotional. And of course, that's really not what we want to try and embody as a luxury retailer. You know, we're about adding value for the customer, not about subtracting value from the brands that we work with. So that's always a bit of a balance that we have to work through. You know, I think there's a few ways that we can really focus on that. What you'll see, and again, this is kind of more typical across luxury loyalty programs, is less of a focus on discounting and price-led promotions, and more emphasis on experiences and experiential benefits. You know, we have a beautiful store. We run events that we can invite customers to. You know, a lot of the benefits that we run in the program are linked to having a great time when you come into store. So whether that is you know, having a free glass of champagne at one of our restaurants when you come and dine with us, or maybe it's a free beauty treatment when you come in on your birthday and we want to treat you. It's all about making the customer feel special and really closely connected to the store. So that's a way that we can add value for the customer without detracting from the brand value that we try and maintain. I think, you know, it's interesting actually. I talk about what motivates a customer, and one of the things I talk about a lot when I'm planning promotions or working with other stakeholders in the business is that it's often not about how much you spend on a discount. So I have this mantra where I say it's, you know, low cost to us but high perceived value for the customer. That's the sweet spot where we can really do a great job. Often what very high spending customers are looking for, because they can buy kind of anything they want, is the things that they can't buy. So what are the things that we can give them that they couldn't possibly buy themselves? And those are often things that will really drive customer engagement. So to take one example, we spotted that, so we have a pizzeria in the store, right? And you can't book a table at the pizzeria. It's just walk up and you get a table. And on a Saturday afternoon, it gets really, really busy, a long line of people waiting for a pizza. And we spotted that we would have customers that might spend, you know, huge amounts of money on the retail shop floor waiting in line for a pizza. And we thought, this is just, you know, ridiculous. Like, these guys, they should be out there shopping and spending some money with us, of course, but you know, they are super VIP customers for us, so that's a really poor customer experience for them. So how we responded to that was by installing, I mean, we call it the bat phone, but essentially it is a hotline number that they can call up and they get straight through to the central restaurants management team, you know, anytime, and those guys will get them a table at any of our restaurants, bookable, non-bookable. If the restaurant's full, they'll find them a table. And that experience cost us, you know, one phone essentially, but means a huge amount to the customer. They can kind of, you know, they've got this number, they're in there with their friends. Oh, don't worry, I can get us a table. That experience of being able to kind of get behind the velvet rope and have something that they just couldn't possibly pay for is hugely valuable. You know, I kind of liken it to, I don't know if you guys have seen Goodfellas, where, you know, he goes in through the back of the restaurant and they whip a table out and put it down. That's the kind of experience that I want the customers to have, where they feel super connected to the brand and really access all areas.
Okay, thank you. When we talk about those recognitions, is that something that is basically applicable to all of your customers, or is that something where you narrow yourself down basically to the top tier customers? How are you organizing and structuring this? And then in turn, maybe Julian, how do you offer that through the loyalty program basically? So these kinds of rewards and recognitions, how are they redeemable at the end of the day? Besides the phone example, of course, for the Goodfellas guy to show up and get a table out of thin air, but how is that reflected in it? This is a very narrowed down example, which is of course tied to brick and mortar, which is of course tied to a very limited amount of customers, I would assume. So how do you scale, basically?
Yeah, I mean, that really is why we've been doing the work with KPS and yourselves. So, as I say, we do this very well for a small number of very high-spending customers where you can invest at the right levels to give that true one-to-one service. So, it's very old school in that sense, in that it is an individual that you're dealing with. It's often via phone or WhatsApp, very, very personalized, hyper-personalized. I think what we recognise is that level of service, more and more customers are coming to expect that level of service. More brands are able to offer a high level of recognition and personalisation through all of the digital transformation work that they're doing. So I think what we're trying to do is take the learnings that we have from the top end and look at how we can apply that to the rest of the base, but leveraging digital solutions, building functionality into our app, for example, or into our website that allows the customer to feel like we know who they are and can service them in a way that suits them, but without us having to invest in a one-to-one personal shopper.
Of course. Interesting.
Maybe to add on top of that, loyalty is never ever standalone. There's always marketing, communications, promotions, all this attached to it. And now that we are finally at the end of our program, Harrods also has the capabilities to have, let's say, the 100 best customer in a personal engagement, but the next tier we can automatize. And we are not talking about segments, we are talking about really personalized, automatized marketing communications, promotions that are really on spot for that customer. So customer always comes on a Friday to buy their sandwich for the after work party or whatever. We are now able to find that out, incentivize exactly that to make them buy the larger sandwich or something else.
Okay. Taking a look at the customers again a bit more, actually, not the technical side, but you told me a very interesting story when we did the preparation basically for that. That you are engaged with customers over generations, and to be honest, I was struggling with understanding that too, because this is not how I do retail shopping, obviously. But there is obviously a kind of generation change within your customer base as well, which is, I think, for Harrods quite special. Could you elaborate on that one? Because I love the story. That's the first thing. The other thing is, I think it gives a lot of insight on how you prepare for the future, basically, and why are you actually doing that undertaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story that I told you was that within private shopping, we absolutely have, and particularly through the very kind of top end of our personal shopping experiences, we have customers who have come in and shopped at Harrods since they were children, with their parents, and have grown up with that experience of coming in and shopping with a single person. Here's John, here's my shopper, and now they, as adults, have started shopping with John 20 years later, and so that connection to the brand is really deep, because it's kind of one of the basic memories they have of shopping as a child is coming in and dealing with this exact same guy. And this guy's been working, this is a made-up guy, but there are people who have been in that position in the business for 20 or 30 years, hugely experienced, know exactly what they're doing, and they know how to engage with these people. So that whole it's a balance, I think. So for those younger generations, of course they want the same slick, digitalized, immediate service that they will get through other modern brands, but we also have to try and maintain that feeling of prestige and heritage that really pins down what Harrods is about. It's that kind of when we do research, a lot of why when we ask customers, well, why do you shop at Harrods? A lot of the time they answer, oh, well, I came here when I was a kid with my parents and I had an amazing experience. And I remember running around the chocolate hall and the toy section and all of these quite like childhood memories, and that's one of the things that motivates them to shop now. So that's probably quite unique for us. I don't think there's probably that many retailers that have that deep connection. So it's always a bit of a tricky one, because we have to try and find, how do we enhance that sentiment? How do we try and kind of keep the core brand values while not losing our focus on staying up to date and keeping our operations modern?
And getting that, maybe this top tier view maybe a bit down again, when we take a look at the scaling example, so this is the personal shopping side of things, which is obviously quite well under control, and you're doing that basically at the center of your business for decades now. When you think about scaling it out now to make it accessible for more people and larger groups, basically, what kind of service do you want to, or how do you do that? How do you mimic that kind of behavior? Because you can't really now just invite or employ like thousands of personal shoppers, obviously, that do personal one-to-one shopping with them, but you can give them digital companions to mimic that kind of behavior. So what are you doing at scale, basically, for those in the audience that do not have the personnel and capacity to do the one-to-one shopping, basically?
So, so I think there's a couple of things. Within my team, within the digital space, we're definitely trying to combine the technology and the data to give customers what feels like a very personalized experience, even if it is still delivered at scale. And this, I guess, is much more typical of what a lot of retailers out there are trying to do. So we're trying to be much more dynamic with the content that we serve through our communications. We're building a lot more in the way of triggered lifecycle communication, so recognizing where the customer is in their purchase journey or in their lifecycle with Harrods, and trying to respond to that in real time through the right channel that the customer is going to engage with, and hopefully with the content that's going to engage them. I think maybe what's slightly different is we're also looking at how we get that insight into the hands of our store staff as well. So this piece around clienteling is really important to us. You know, we do have a growing website, but still the bricks and mortar side of the business is by far and away the biggest part of our biggest channel. So it's how do we get that? How do we give the data and the kind of the insight to shoppers, people on the shop floor, so they can have those kind of data-powered human interactions with the rest of the customer bases who move in. You know, a large proportion of our customers do use the rewards program, so we can identify them one-to-one, but it's finding ways to trigger that data and then to respond to it.
And Julian, from a technical side, what can other retailers learn from that?
I guess it's really about treating the customer to an extent. So I think all of the other retailers, be it, for example, a cruise ship company, they all have their 10% best customers that are coming every time, and they have kind of a personal relationship. But you can kind of mimic what Harrods is doing also in an automated way. You can also start with the first communication when they did the booking, then take them on a journey, make them, incentivize them to download the app or something, and keep them engaged, and also in an automatized way. I think all the retailer can learn from that you should not just throw out newsletter to your customers and expect that they're going to react to it and buy. It must be relevant to the customer.
Thanks.
And just, I guess, just on your point around, you know, how do we give the same service to every customer? I think one of the things that we're trying to be a bit better on is recognizing that actually we probably can't do that. So, you know, I've talked about some of the customer profiling that we've been doing, customer profiling, customer persona generation, and, you know, we have generated maybe 6 or 7 or 8 customer profiles that we can recognize as distinct customer groups within the business. But actually, strategically, we've made a decision that we're not necessarily going to be creating a distinct strategy for all of those. So, you know, we've had to make some hard calls to say, you know, we're not going to try and do everything. We're going to try and do a few things really well. We're going to focus on the customer groups that we know have the greatest resonance with us, that have the greatest headroom potential. And that's a really important concept that we're trying to embed, is this idea of looking at customer headroom rather than historical spend. So where's the incremental value that we can go after? And by doing that, we're hoping that we should drive the most out of our customer engagement investment. And actually, a lot of the other customer segments that we recognize in the business will get a halo effect from that, because a lot of them are more aspirational customers. So the content that's right for our VIPs actually is the type of content that the aspirational customers want to see, even if it's not necessarily directed at them personally, if you see what I mean.
Now we spend a lot of time talking about all the stuff that you're doing great. How do you treat retention? Is that actually a problem in a brand like Harrods? How do you react on that? Can you predict it somehow with the tools that you have enabled now?
Yeah. So I mean, again, you know, it's a case of understanding which customers we want to retain and which ones are we're going to naturally see churn, and we're relatively comfortable with that. As a tourist destination as well as a luxury shop, we do see a lot of single purchasing customers who come in, they'll buy a bear, they might buy something from the food hall, and that's it. You know, they're gone back to their home country. So we're becoming a bit more intelligent with how we spot who we should be trying to retain. And obviously some of those are very obvious, some of those are the high spenders, but some of them are a bit more subtle in terms of maybe we haven't fully unlocked that customer's potential. We should really look at going after them in a bit more. So yeah, I think this is where we're really drawing on the data science that we can deliver through the new platforms we've brought in. So we're looking at predictive churn models where we take all of the data that we hold on an individual and we try to spot as early as possible how likely they are to actually churn out of the business and stop transacting altogether. So that means that we can enact different types of customer engagement and customer retention activity much sooner than if we were waiting for them to stop transacting with us. And actually at that point, we've probably already lost that customer. So that's something that we're trialing at the moment. And I think we're already starting to see some good results from that. The other one, when it comes to predictive analytics, which is probably a bit more specific to Harrods, is we are also looking at how we can, predict wealth, essentially, not to be too blunt about it. So, how can we look at somebody's spending patterns maybe really early on in their journey and predict how likely they are to become one of our top spenders? So to take an example for that, we might have a customer who comes in and they've maybe spent £5,000 over the course of 6 months, or two customers, I should say. One of them spent across a number of different departments. They bought food, they bought some fashion, they've bought some beauty. They've come in 3 or 4 times. That customer's an okay level of spend, but actually, they're really kind of spreading. It feels like they're well engaged with the business. Maybe they don't have that much more to give. The other person has come in and bought, one outfit of Louis Vuitton kidswear, and that customer
for
probably
an unknown amount of pound.
yes. So that customer probably has a lot more. They're buying that kind of amount of children's wear that their kid might grow out of. They've probably got a lot more to give. So actually, despite the fact that it's the same ultimate spending that we've seen, we know that that's the customer that we should be investing in and trying to grow and nurture.
Yeah, makes sense. Good. Let's take a look at testing after we had our little accident this morning. So how do you actually ensure that you have a lot of marketing activities? Yeah? Just to sum it up, what you just told us, you have your personal shoppers obviously engaged with your top tier customers. You have your website, you have a loyalty program, you do campaigns and promotions, obviously. You have the in-store staff as well. So there's a lot of things going on with Harrods. A lot of data points, a lot of touch points. Julian touched briefly on that. The first problem was the siloed data. So how do you ensure that you are actually spending the right money in the right place, besides the predictive model that you just shed some light on? But what is it, how do you make sure that your marketing activities actually hit the point?
Really test and learn kind of underpins everything we do. So we really try and avoid jumping to conclusions. So across my team, the way we go about bringing new ideas, whether that's a new proposition for the loyalty program or whether that's a new type of campaign, we'll start with a hypothesis that we want to try and prove or disprove. And then we've got a team of analysts within my function who will work with us to set up the right test to try and validate whether or not that hypothesis is right. And it might be, by giving a customer a free glass of champagne on their birthday, we'll see them come in more frequently and spend more. It could be as simple as that. And then we look at how we set up that test. We've got a real focus on control testing, so making sure that we're being as robust as possible in terms of the allocation of the value that we're driving. And that is a cyclical process. So we'll take the results from that and we will iterate. So whether that proves what we're hoping it's to prove and that proposition or that event becomes part of our BAU, or whether actually we spot something really interesting in the data that we want to explore further and we'll add another test into the roadmap. We try and stay as agile as possible on that and just try and embed with the teams that, we're never done. The job is never kind of complete. We're never at a final set of campaigns or propositions. It's always supposed to be a building and iteration. And that kind of mindset just means that, we kind of can stay on top of developments.
But from an organizational perspective, so you spend that kind of testing organization across all the departments, across the various functions to enable that kind of testing in the first place, right?
Well, I think we're probably leading the way, to be honest. I think, we're one of the teams that has more immediate access to the data and more levers at our disposal in which to try and influence customer behavior. So we've kind of been the guinea pig in terms of how we use control testing and this kind of methodology. But certainly at the moment we're in the process of building a centralized data science function. So that will become a bit of an internal agency to then work with different teams across the business and help them to do similar things. And whether that's, supply chain or whether that is, looking at store location, we can apply these same kinds of concepts.
Yeah, nice. Julian, from a technical side of things, how do you support this kind of testing approach
Yeah, we have, if we take marketing communications, for example, then we have simple A/B testing, also embedded in the marketing automation tool that we can simply use, and then dependent on the reaction that we see from a customer, it automatically chooses after 1,000 recipients the better version. But also when we look at more complex scenarios, so for example, we have a campaign together with a loyalty promotion where you get double points, then we also try to test that at a bigger scale with the team of Net to say, okay, is it worth to make a double points campaign? Is it maybe worth to give 200 points extra? Is there something else that we need to do? And we are just bringing them the capabilities. And Net has a magnificent team of analysts that are doing the data science work behind that. We are helping them getting the right data points into their systems for that. We are really gathering everything. We are gathering customers. We are looking at customers who react, customers who didn't react. We use target group and control group scenarios where we have similar appearing customers. The ones are treated, the other ones are not treated, to really measure an uplift of a campaign that you cannot really measure because you want to promote the Chanel products that are only available in store. How do you know that customers really bought something? Then you really need to go into a control testing scenario where you have a target group and a treatment group and a control group to really understand what is the uplift that we could do with that marketing campaign. Great.
And I think, really one of the key things is not to overcomplicate this. I mean, it sounds very complicated, but as I say, it's all about building up over time. So, we start very simply with one or two things that we want to test. We don't try and jump to the complex solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Then we're actually coming to the end, more or less. We lost a bit track of time due to the whole setup issue, but anyway, we will have a Q&A session afterwards. But to finish off, at the end of the day, I mean, that is quite obvious, yeah? At the end of the day, excellent service is the key to keep customers. From your perspective, maybe just to add some wisdom to the crowd, what are the key activities that actually do make a difference?
Yeah, I don't know about wisdom, but I mean, so I think what I try and focus on is how do we make all of our customers feel like they're in that top group. So how do we try and extend that feeling of being a VIP customer to everybody who comes in through the doors or everyone who shops on the website. And of course, we need to recognize that there are different ways of doing that, different levels of investment that we're willing to make, depending on the ultimate customer lifetime value or the return on investment that we foresee from them. But I think you can do that really just through making sure that you start with the data. So every time you have a decision to make, we go back to the data and we try and interrogate, who is it that we're trying to engage with? What do we know about that customer? What is going to motivate them? What's going to make them feel special? And from there, often the answers can come quite quickly. So we try and keep the dialogue open with our customers as well. So we let them tell us what they want from us. Rather than guessing, customers are often very willing to offer up those opinions. So that's usually a very good way. But also, I think investing in great analysts, as Julian says, I've got an excellent team of analysts. They're definitely the brains of the operation. But that can make all the difference in meaning that you get all the value from the data that you hold as well.
Thank you. So I think we are opening for the Q&A now.
Maybe just one item on top of that. Because we now have all the data among all the touch points of the customer, when they call the service or go onto the service center in the store, they now see everything. They see everything around the customer. So most likely they already know why the customer have called, what's the complaint from the customer. So we are really able to give them the best service possible. Maybe just one question from me to Net. Having no barriers, no budget limitations, what would you like to change on your loyalty program?
Be careful, this could be a change request now.
They're all frozen now. I mean, it's a really tricky one. So, I mean, the limitations are obviously the technical limitations of doing these things, but also, the thing that is really tricky is changing a program that is so well loved by your customers. I don't know if any of you guys work in loyalty, but it's incredibly difficult to make changes and for customers not to realize it and react quite strongly, particularly if it's a benefit that they really love. I mean, hopefully there's no one here who works in this brand, but I saw in the news maybe a year ago there was a cruise company that decided to take away like a commemorative statue that they gave out if you did 5 cruises with them, like really insignificant, and it was uproar. Like people were like horrified. They're never going to sail with you again, and you turned in about 24 hours. So, that was for a very small thing. So we're always very careful about what we try and change in the program and make sure that it's very well communicated to customers and we're sure that they're not going to react. But anyway, that aside, I think the thing that I'm definitely wanting to try and bring more of to the program is choice and personalization. So giving the customer the ability to kind of curate the program that they want. And there are a few programs out there starting to do this now. So giving the option of selecting your own benefits or, nominating information about yourself so the brand can then respond. And again, it kind of comes back to that value exchange. Customers are always very willing to give up their data if they see the value back in return. So I think for me, it's moving towards that kind of much more dynamic program where it's, there's not a fixed set of experiences for any one customer. Everyone gets a relatively unique experience. Just slightly fills me with dread how complex that could end up being, but there you go.
Good, thank you. So then I think if Julian hasn't any other questions tonight, no, I'm perfect. Then we can open the floor basically for questions from you. I'm not entirely sure how we do that technically. I think I just run around with you run around with the microphone. That's even better. Thank you.
So I think you're what's first here.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you have to shout because
You can-
we can't hear you basically. So we don't hear what we are saying.
Okay.
Well, that's,
Okay, I will speak loudly.
Yes.
I have a question regarding clienteling out of the store. You told about John, the personal shopper. So how is it possible for John to engage with his most loyal customers out of the store? Do you have tools, or how is it Harrods doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've played around with lots of different solutions and we've looked at, different types of very advanced clienteling tool, but really what works is WhatsApp. So this is where the majority of our customer not present, we call them, interactions come from, because that's the channel that customers are most naturally using to chat with everyone else that they talk to on their phone. So there's downfalls of that. There's much less centralized control that the kind of leadership can have over those channels. So you do have to give a lot of trust to your personal shoppers to use that channel properly. It's very difficult to tell them what to say through that channel. So if you want to try and broadcast a message out, it's very difficult to ensure that every shopper will do that because, in fairness, they know what each of their customers wants to hear from them. So, it's a challenge, but on the other hand, it means that the customer feels that this is a more personal relationship. It's more natural for the customer to just pick up the phone, hey, John, I'm looking for this bag, can you help? Rather than it kind of being a formal system or a tool that they have to try and remember their password for, and they can't remember their password, and it becomes, there's a lot of friction in that experience.
Okay, I think if I get it right, you draw your conclusions about the customer mostly based on first-party data, right? But Julian, you said you're going to enrich the knowledge about the customer by Facebook data as well. So can you be more specific about that?
Sure. So in general, it's not necessarily Facebook data, but it's data that you get publicly available. So we are now able to also get data from, let's say, the sun. So we are able to, in the next step, understand what kind of the VIPs, what are the things that they are turning around right now. We have Boris Becker, for example. We now know that he's broke, and that is data that we could, for example, use to make him obsolete in the system, to say we are not going to market to them. It's all possible. I don't know to what extent I'm able to talk about what data you're getting.
That's fine. That's fine. Anyone else?
Oh, okay. So I do get it. There is a huge point of local interaction with your customers, but most of your customers might be global customers. So how meaningful is the program for them when they, for example, just came here and there to London to really go into the store? And how do you engage with them in a valuable way?
I'm going to take this off so I can't hear my own voice because that would be awful. But yeah, I mean, so we definitely do have customers who shop from their own home country. And increasingly, we're seeing more and more customers shop via our website. So one of the big areas that I'm looking at as part of the loyalty program development is how do we recreate the great experience that we deliver in store online. And I think this is not just in loyalty, but this is a challenge that luxury retailers are facing into a lot right now, which is, in store we can, coat the place in marble, we can make it smell lovely, it can be, beautifully merchandised, and we can train our staff. How do you replicate those indicators of luxury online? It's very difficult, and actually it's a bit of an equalizer. So I think what customers really value is a super slick operational experience, removing all of the barriers to shopping. We hate to say it, but actually probably the best use case here is Amazon, right? It's, you always log in because your content will be personalized. It's one-click checkout. It's going to get delivered the next day. It's, seamless but front to back. Really, that is a luxury experience online. So I think we're looking at how we can build those elements into the program. So whether that's, free delivery, or whether that's, gift with purchasing online, or, other elements that make the online experience feel as well maintained as a store experience is probably where we're focused there. I would also say, particularly when you look at some of our most engaged customers, they are kind of global citizens, I would say. So a lot of them, yes, they're based in a different country, but they're traveling to the UK frequently throughout the year. They often will have a second home in London, and they'll kind of bounce back between the two countries. So, we do see a lot of engagement from those customers. We have distinct profiles within the business that look exactly at that kind of individual. So another one of the predictive models that we're trying to develop at the moment is essentially a store propensity to visit model. So we can take the data that we hold on these types of customers and say how likely are they to come to Knightsbridge in the next 30 days, say. So, that might be based on they come every summer, and we see a lot of our Middle Eastern customers fly across for the summer because it's way too hot, so they come and live in London. It might be that they always come in at Christmas, but it might be something a bit more complex than that. But we can build that into our marketing to then say, okay, you're now at a point where we think you're very likely to visit. We can switch our content from being about the website to being about making the most of that trip to London.
Maybe just one thing to add from a more broader market perspective, as we have a couple of other luxury clients as well. We see that the one thing that is actually the greatest lever that we see with our clients in building that kind of experience online is really this personalization piece. So leveraging on the data that we have and that we have collected through those engagement triggers in the loyalty program, and reusing that in order to make it as nice and homely basically for them as possible in the online shop. Yeah, we've seen over the last couple of years, we've always seen online shops that basically had the equivalent of going to a grocery discounter. Yeah, so they just unpacked basically all the things that they have and listed, and then you're good to go, you'll find it anyway. That kind of experience doesn't work in luxury because it doesn't transport luxury at the end of the day. Tailoring the content and the propositions and the promotions and the products that you have directly for your customer, that is what actually makes the difference for a global customer that is not able to travel for whatever reason. That's what we see also on the market side. There are more, even more. Oh, that's great.
Was there a special tool to bring all the data together, maybe even an out-of-the-box tool, or was it a lot of programming? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't know if I can promote them. I don't care. It's SAP Marketing Cloud that we implemented there, and that has great capabilities at scale for a global marketing or global enterprise like Harrods, where you really can bring all the data together, and they have the right data structure. They have something called marketing interactions, which you can basically bend to really reflect every touch point that you have with the customer, so really every interaction.
Hi, thank you for the teddy bear, first of all.
You're welcome.
I'm the co-founder of a service-based recurring revenue business. This is weird. And My question is, with the data that I'm always thinking in terms of churn rate, and monthly recurring revenue and that sort of thing, mainly elongating the customer experience. So with all of the data that you guys have been collecting in your loyalty program, have you considered any kind of program where you incentivize that loyalty through some kind of a subscription-based thing? I guess you kind of already touched on it with the Amazon Prime model, but what does that look like for Harrods?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is something that we're starting to play around with. I think, I mean, as I said, we've got a very broad range of products and categories that we sell. So some lend themselves better to this than others. We have furniture where actually, you're only going to buy a mattress every 9 years or something, I think the life cycle is. But, we also do have beauty and food and wine and fashion to an extent where there's a high frequency. And particularly in areas like beauty, there is a predictable element to that. So I think we're starting to play around with not necessarily paid for subscriptions yet, although I know that's something that we have discussed, but looking at how we can predict the life cycle of different products that we know customers buy frequently, and then marketing that product to them at the right moment. So if you take a La Mer skin cream, for example, which might have a 6-week usage cycle for someone who's a high volume user of it, actually at week 5 we should be talking to that customer about replenishment so that they come to us rather than going to any of the other competitors that stock that product. And beauty is a particular area because the products are generally available more widely than some of our other categories. Some of our fashion brands, for example, the customers come to Harrods for that one product because we're the only place who stock it. Often it might be an exclusive for Harrods. So I think it's about finding the right product for the right customer experience.
I have a quick question on data residency. You have a lot of global customers who suddenly will come and shop in London from Asia. Have you ever considered doing anything about it? Or you never had this question, or you never had this problem?
So as part of the systems that we implemented, we also need to apply to the local GDPR rules, which means that we have the customer data in the places that they belong to. So there is physically a data center provided by SAP again in China, one in Russia, one in Europe, and they make sure that the customer data is dependent on the country which we put into the system spread onto that systems. For Harrods as such, as a customer or for the people that are using the tools, they're not going to see it. It's really just in the background, but it's a requirement that they need to do to comply to GDPR rules.
Also about consent. So if someone consented, let's say in some type of a service system and not in the marketing system directly before opening a case, or just trying to get something solved. Do you know that that's been already done somewhere in some other system? Like, how do you manage consent sort of in a consolidated way?
That's awkward. So we are managing consent centrally. So there's something called Customer Data Cloud, again SAP product, where we have something called Consent Vault. And that's the central place where all the customer consents are being stored. So from all the touch points, the customer consent ultimately finds their way into that. It sounds special, but in the end it's a timestamp, and nobody is able to change that. So that we always have the ultimate record of a customer, when did they consent and what was the consent about, for example, email permission, SMS permission, or something like that.
And that's obviously hugely valuable for us. As before this program, we would have pools of consent from different systems. I mean, like our Wi-Fi in store or the hair and beauty booking services that were not necessarily well integrated into that central consent pool. So we would have consents that would end up just kind of becoming unused and expiring because we couldn't easily access them through our centralized CRM. So that's a big improvement for us.
Thank you. You mentioned that you would like to have a customizable benefits program, okay, and that you like tests in the same time. Have you tested on a small range of people, on a small group, something like that, in the sense to
choosing one representative person from each category of customers to see what they would choose on their own if they could, if the world was their oyster?
So we haven't started on this yet, but I think we would certainly look at a level of testing. I think, this is the challenge with a publicly available and publicly viewable loyalty program is once you commit to a set of benefits that are then on your website and on any of your collateral, it can be very difficult to chop and change, and you don't really want to be seen to constantly be making change to the program because loyalty is all about long-term engagement. So I think that approach is right, but what we would probably do is test that in a more promotional sense. So offer that up to a customer or a group of customers for a period of time, see how that group of customer responds, maybe in a slightly different setting, and then see how we can extrapolate those results to apply for the program as a whole. As I said, this process of change, iterating a loyalty program is difficult because it's very visible. It's a publicly facing product. So it's not the same as below the line promotion, which you can just really keep targeted to a specific group of customers.
Hi, thank you. You are really a traditional and big and known company, and you said you want to try more innovation and new ways. How do you get the stakeholders in your company, and how much time do you spend in your colleagues who are not believing? Okay.
A lot of time. It's a large part of my job over the course of the program has been making sure that everyone across the organization really understands what change we're trying to drive, what are the values for the customer, what's the value for them, ultimately, right? It's about, people care about their own agenda. So, it's a big organization. There's lots of people that have been there for a long time. So I think, going into it, it was certainly an area that I was quite worried about. It is quite big transformational change. So how would people react? Would there be resistance from particular groups in the business who felt like maybe they were being shortchanged? But actually, I think the response has been very positive. We spent a lot of time on our stakeholder engagement planning and really just making sure that everyone, firstly understands what it is we're trying to achieve and what the value is for them, but also giving them a chance to feed in as well. So, at no point have we come with a final product to say, this is it, you have to accept it. It's very much about saying, this is what we'd like to do. What's your take? How might we adapt this so that it's best going to suit what you guys want to achieve? So, ultimately, at the end of the day, the business is all pulling in the same direction. We're all trying to achieve the same commercial goals. So I think the change has been just making sure that everyone is kind of aligned in how we get there. But actually, I've been very surprised with how positive the response has been. Everyone's very on board.
Well, sorry. I was about to ask exactly the same question. But building on that is, how do you actually convince those stakeholders that might be, let's say, slightly against it, or like, what is the plan to make this a success for the company? Because indeed they all have their agendas, and even just agendas, even priorities. They might be like, this is not relevant for me right now. How did you manage to turn them around? How to convince them to buy into the program?
Yeah, they're gone. Dead. No. I think partly it's to do with engaging the leadership. So, it's not just coming from me. It's kind of top down. So, as I said, it's about starting with a central idea and then making sure that the right influencers across the business are able to then cascade that to their teams. There will of course be people who are more ready to embrace this kind of change than others. And I think for those, if it's coming from the top down, to an extent, you have to do it, right? So that kind of gets you half the way there. Beyond that, in terms of winning goodwill from those individuals, I think it's just being really clear about working with them and quite quickly demonstrating the value. So, hopefully we can easily show why this has been a positive change for us, and we can really quickly start to show the returns on that investment. So, once you've got the numbers, it becomes very difficult to argue with. So I think that's the position that we have to really focus on this year to get ourselves to a place where, we've proven the case as quickly as we can.
In the simplest way, as a top retailer, and you have top-tier brands, what's the cross-pollination of your data and their data like? How do you benefit each other? Is that another, how do they help you? What are the side problems that you may encounter with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Of course, we have to be quite careful with what data we share, both commercially but also from a GDPR point of view. So, it's certainly not an open book. But of course, we see our brands as partners, in our business. They are really what keep our customers coming back, is that relationship. If you look at the absolute top luxury brands, they have a finite amount of product. They're not going to make more. They don't respond to demand in the same way that other companies might do. So, really we have to have a very strong relationship with them in order to win the product that we want to then put in front of our customers. So I think in everything we do, we're always trying to share as much insight as we can to help them to understand the Harrods environment and the Harrods customer and how they can better market their own brands within our estate. So a lot of the relationships we have are on a concession basis, for example. So the brands have a lot of control over their space within the store. So of course, we do work with them on footfall analysis or customer profiling so that they really get a sense of how they can enhance that space, and that is beneficial for both of us. From the guy down here.
Hi. So I got a question. We are producing and selling high quality solid wood furnitures, retail and online. And for us, it's a big challenge to give to make a great customer journey and make the customer to be specialized, to feel specialized, like you do. I mean, you're Harrods. So how do you how important is it for your customer if they are buying online, that they feel specialized, that they say, or is it important that they say, okay, we are buying at Harrods this kind of Gucci bag or furniture or something like that? Is it online important for your customers to buy Harrods at Harrods store, or is it online not that focusing?
I mean, I think it would probably be a bit much to say that our customers care that they're buying from Harrods for the sake of it. I mean, maybe people like to have the green bag when they're walking around town, but they're buying because of the service that they receive, the products that they're able to access, and the benefits that they can get back from the loyalty program. So, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, it really depends on what motivates and drives that customer. So for one person, it might absolutely be the exclusivity of the product that we sell that nowhere else stocks. For others, they just love the points and they always buy at Harrods in store or online because they want to continue building that balance. So again, it's moving away from a one-size-fits-all solution into understanding individual customer needs, motivations, and then you can tailor the messaging. So what might make one customer feel special isn't necessarily going to make another, but you can absolutely replicate that online.
Thanks, that was a bit of a hassle. Let's talk a little bit about the future, right? So the future you might be dreaming of. You have first-party data. You know that your clients want to shop very easy via WhatsApp. There's a tiny Asian app called WeChat that combines that. So could you talk a little bit about the future of luxury shopping going forward with your global customers?
Yeah, WeChat's a good example. I think there's probably a recognition that luxury probably has to release a bit of the kind of control they have over the shopping experience. So, as I said, it's always been about the location, the store, that physical experience. And I definitely think that COVID has just swept that away, and everyone realizes that you have to be able to reach the customer where they are. So whether that is through your website, which is semi-controlled, or whether that's really starting to go out through quite new types of media like TikTok or WeChat, kind of new frontiers for luxury e-commerce. I think that's definitely becoming, people are more open to that conversation. So we have done some playing around with mini programs in China, for example. It's a challenge, because the challenge I think is that when you're starting to look at these very different environments, it's not enough just to take what you do in your store and translate it. And that's the risk that I think people run into, which is just thinking that you can translate something into Chinese, or you can take some content from one channel and dump it into another. You really have to have the capacity to think about what that individual strategy is, particularly when you're thinking about China, which is, of course, so distinct. So, I think the future will become a bit more like that. I think we'll continue to see more channels for customers to engage with. I think we're seeing that with the brands as well. More and more brands who have never sold through third-party channels are starting to do so through e-concession models. That's absolutely an area that we're playing with. As I mentioned, Farfetch, they're obviously a big proponent of that marketplace structure. So I think we'll see more and more brands taking that up and more access to product than before.
Hi, so I also have a question which goes like more into the future. You talked about how you're kind of marketing or like focusing on the loyal customers of the new generation, you called it. How you're going to market like to the younger generation? We just had like with TikTok, but I mean like offline shopping is like, I know it from my parents, for example. So can you a bit elaborate on this?
Yeah, well, and I think I've talked a lot about the digital experience. And I think that's obviously more important for the younger generations who are much more used to doing that. I also think when it comes to bricks and mortar, actually, there's still a big role for that to play. You know, again, this is not a luxury topic, of course, but it's the conversation about what stores will become in the future, and a lot of that is around becoming more of a brand playground, somewhere for you to experience the brand, experience the product, get hands-on. Try clothing on, not necessarily purchase. And Harrods is actually quite well positioned for that. You know, our store is quite, I mean, I'm not hedonistic as such, but it's, it's a bit of a playground anyway where you can get lost and you can do all kinds of things, and it's very experiential. We'll have pop-ups, it's hands-on. So I think, we'll probably see more of that happening. Looking at how we can convert different areas of the store into eventing space or just more kind of collaborative areas where customers can come in, and it's not necessarily all about driving a purchase on the day, but it's about engaging with the brand. And again, I think a lot of our customers, even if they are of the younger generation, there's still a bit of a status piece around being seen in a certain location, hanging out with your friends in certain restaurants. So, for us in luxury, that's also a consideration.
I have a question regarding data sharing with brand partners, luxury brands, online. So how much or what kind of data would you be willing to share with the brand in terms of behavior, sellout, and so on? And what's the tipping point where you would say, I'm afraid that the brand steals your customer?
Are you from a brand?
Yes.
Yeah. This is a negotiation.
Practical question.
I see this, yeah. So, I mean, I think it's probably on a case-by-case basis, really. I think, we have discussions with brands all the time. Partly it comes down to, same with ourselves and our customer, what's the value exchange? So, we're always open to discussion within the kind of limits of GDPR and all the rest of it. I think it comes down to, how are we working with that brand? Do we have some kind of exclusivity that we are jointly working on a new proposition or a new capsule release or something that justifies that sharing of data? Data is value at the end of the day. So I think we treat it as any other kind of negotiating element, really. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think with respect to time, actually, we have to call it a day. Thank you very much for attending. We have a lot of experts with us at our booth for e-commerce, marketing, loyalty, all the topics that we've done with our great client, Harrods. Thank you, Ned, for joining us today on stage. Thank you all for living through the technical difficulties with us. That was also great. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Julian, for presenting the nice case. And everybody have a great festival. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.